Hello, everyone. My name is Jason, and you are watching my ISFP journey. Thank you so much for watching, and do please consider subscribing if you have not already. So, I have been on a kick lately of listening to a particular song. The song is called Highway Patrolman. It was originally written by and performed by Bruce Springsteen around 1982, and then I think it was early 80s, and then it was redone or covered by Johnny Cash later. And I actually like the Johnny Cash version a lot better than I like the Bruce Springsteen version, but that's neither here nor there. The point that I'm really working through are the lyrics. Now, the song Highway Patrolman is about a guy who he's a highway patrolman, and he has a brother who is a bit of a troublemaker. And the song, I just want to kind of go over some of the lyrics with you, and then I want to talk to you about why these lyrics are really hitting me and why I've been spending so much time thinking about these lyrics lately. And then once I've kind of put out there what is going through my mind, I want to ask you guys, your thoughts on it, especially if you're an ISFP. Okay, so the song starts out, he talks about the fact that he's a highway patrolman, and he says that he's always done an honest job, as honest as he could, or I'll quote it. He says, I've always done an honest job, as honest as I could. I've got a brother named Frankie. Well, Frankie ain't no good. And then he goes on to say, ever since we were young, it's been the same come down. I get a call on the shortwave. There's trouble with Frankie downtown. And then he says something to the effect of, and I think I'll quote this right. He says, now, if it were any other man, I'd put him straight away, meaning I'd put him in prison. But sometimes when it's your brother, you look the other way. And then he says, me and Frankie, it kind of goes into the chorus, and it says, me and Frankie laughing and drinking, nothing feels better than blood on blood. So he's talking about his brotherhood relationship with his brother Frankie. And then he goes on after that, and he says, speaking of himself in relation to his brother Frankie, he says, I catch him when he's straying, like any brother would. A man turns his back on his family, he ain't no good. And in another place, he says, I catch him when he's straying, teach him how to walk that line. And then something I think he says, any man who turns his back on his family ain't no friend of mine. So this has really been hitting me a lot lately because I have family, as most of us do, but we all have layers of family, right? I mean, I have my wife and my children, to whom I am the closest and the most devoted. And then there are my parents. And then I have a brother. He's technically a stepbrother, but to me, he's my brother. And then I have, aunts and uncles, cousins, so on and so forth. Now, the family dynamic that I have in my family is dramatically different than the family dynamic of my wife's family. My wife's family are, like you could be like 43rd cousin, 157th removed. And it's like, no, we're blood. You are my family, And for me, parts of my family are not quite as close like that. So, family has a little bit different definition in my family, or the family that was my family growing up, versus in the family that was my wife's family growing up. And I'm differentiating that from when I say my family, meaning me, my wife, and my children. So I think that we associate this sort of extreme devotion to family more so with people who have high introverted sensing. So your ISFJs and your ISTJs especially, but your ESTJs and ESFJs, these are all people who have introverted sensing very high in their cognitive function stack. And just from my own experience and from anecdotal readings that you find among the MBTI community, your people with high introverted sensing seem to have this sort of family, right or wrong, family to the last breath, Family is everything. You never turn your back on your family. I mean, I kind of, as I hear myself saying that, it makes me think honestly of like the Godfather movies, It's this sort of idea that we are blood and there is, nothing that can separate us. There is nothing that can tear us apart. We are a unit, a family unit, and we must do everything we can to protect one another, and we must be a part of one another in such an integrated way that we cannot possibly be separated. I personally don't feel that a lot. I feel it with my wife and my children. I feel it with some extremely close members of my family, parents, certain uncles. I feel it very closely with. But as a general rule, if I have a family member and I'm not around that family member a lot, I don't interact with that family member a lot, I don't have that sort of, you are my blood and we must consider ourselves to be, like this, okay? Now, in the song, the situation is not a cousin or an aunt or an uncle or, someone more distant. It's brother. But it has raised within me this sort of pondering within myself of what value do I place on certain family members for no other reason than that they are family? And as I answer that question for myself, I then, of course, am presented with this question. To what degree is my answer dependent upon my personality type? Are the ISFJs and ISTJs, the ESFJs and ESTJs naturally more drawn to that idea that family, that blood, what is it? Blood is thicker than water, I think, family at all costs. Or is it more of an upbringing thing? Is it a combination of both? And I think that I'm seeing, practically speaking, in my life, that the high SI people do hold family concepts at a higher esteem than the low SI or no SI, no introverted sensing like myself, kind of people do. And so let me just give you some thoughts and some examples, and we'll touch on the song a little bit as we go too. So in this song, we have a highway patrolman, and of course I say of course, I tend to associate police more with high SI people who are perhaps ISTJs especially, people who see the value in the structure of society and in keeping it protected and keeping what has been built going, not allowing it to crumble. And of course, I know that right now the topic of police is very contentious in our society, so I'm not making any kind of comments on that. I'm just trying to analyze what kind of mindset leads a person to go into police work. And I'm sure there are many. I'm sure there are police officers out there of every type. However, I do think that the ISTJ or maybe even the ISFJ is a type, or ESTJs especially too, that these are types that would see the structure of society as being good and valuable, and then finding value themselves in landing in a role like a police officer where you're protecting that. But of course, anytime you find yourself in a situation where you hold something up in high esteem, like let's say the rules or the laws or the structure of society, you always have those times when your commitment to that is tested. And in this song, it's tested by his brother, right? He's saying, I've always done an honest job, as honest as I could. So he is trying to not only be a good police officer, but he's trying to, uphold these standards that he considers to be valuable. Of course, I'm reading into the song quite a bit, but I think it's fair to read into it. You can listen to the song yourself and see if I'm crazy for reading anything into it. But then he has this problem where he's got this brother and that is a troublemaker. And he says, if it were any other man, I'd lock him straight away. But sometimes when it's your brother, you look the other way. And here's my question for you. For the people with high introverted sensing who consider family to be above all else, or maybe it's not the people with high introverted sensing, whatever type you are, tell me, whatever type you are watching this video, if you are a person who considers family to be like number one priority, do you find yourself willing to compromise on your values, compromise on your the other things in your life that you consider to be important, if necessary, in order to do something that you consider to be for the good of, or the well-being of, or just the general maintenance of a relationship with a family member? Because what I find is, I don't think I have that. I think, and this could be very much an FI thing, having FI very high, I find that my values and what I consider to be important supersede and trump. They take priority over a lot of these relationships. And so if the relationship might be damaged by my adherence to a concept that I hold in high esteem, I will tend to allow that damage to happen because my value set tends to be more important than the relationship. So the relationship will have to take a back seat to me being true to what I consider to be who I am. In this song, the policeman, the highway patrolman, who's we're getting his perspective in the song, he is setting aside his values for the relationship that he has with his brother. And then he says, me and Frankie laughing and drinking, nothing feels better than blood on blood. I have family members that I love deeply, deeply, deeply. And when I say family members, of course I love my wife and children deeply, deeply, but I'm talking about people who I was born into them, right? I didn't choose them. I have family members that I hold in such high esteem, and I love them dearly, and I love to spend time with them. But I don't know that when I'm spending time with them, I'm thinking nothing feels better than blood on blood, or nothing feels better than the fact that I have this relationship that is built on the foundation of we are blood. I was born into you and you were born into me, and we are together through our DNA, so to speak. That is not there for me. I connect because we have things in common. I connect because I respect you. I connect because I am interested in you. When we're together, I'm having a fun time, or I'm learning from you, or I just generally have a high esteem for you, and therefore I feel like I'm gaining something wonderful from the relationship, but not just solely on the fact that we're blood. That in and of itself doesn't really do anything for me. And I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It matters, but it will take a back seat to more important concepts if the two are at odds with one another. I will let a familial relationship suffer if that relationship does damage to my emotional well-being, or my stability, or just the general stability of my life and my family, meaning myself, my wife, and my children. Those things are more important than just the mere fact that you and I were born into the same family. And then he goes on to say, I catch him when he's straying, like any brother would or should. I think maybe one time he says would and one time he says should, but either way. And then he says, a man turns his back on his family, he just ain't no good. Now, I would agree with that if the definition of turning your back on your family is abandonment. You know what I mean? Like, that you're like in the Bible, Jesus berates the Pharisees for many things, but one thing he says is, you basically, and I'll oversimplify the concept, but he says, you have money and your parents are in need, and you don't help them because you have said that money is devoted to the temple. And that's wrong. You should be using that money to help your parents. Not that it's bad to give to the temple, but don't give to the temple if it means someone else goes without. Someone like your parents goes without, right? So, I mean, on the one hand, yes, if turning your back on your family means that, if turning your back on your family means walking out on your wife and then, like your wife and kids don't know where their next meal is going to come from, well, forget that. You made a commitment when you said I do. You made a commitment to your wife. So yes, turning your back on your family in that sense, like seeing them in need and abandoning them, that is bad. I agree. I agree with that. But then again, turning your back on anyone that you see in need and you're just like, oh, look, that dude's on the side of the road starving to death, not my problem. Well, that ain't no good either. I mean, that's bad too, family or not. But in this sense, think about how he's saying it. He's saying, I've got this brother that is trouble, and it's my job to put people who are trouble in jail. And I do that job, and I do it faithfully and honestly until it comes to my brother. And I look the other way with my brother. Why? Because if I turn my back on my family, I ain't no good. And what would turning his back on his family be? It would be holding his brother accountable by the standard of the law, which he has sworn to uphold. So he is making his oath to uphold the law subservient to his commitment to his brother, or to the blood relationship that he has with his brother. And I guess what I'm saying is, if the definition of turning your back on your family is setting aside your own principles and the things that you consider to be non-negotiable, if you're willing to set those aside for the sake of a relationship with your family, that's something where I have to be honest and say, I'm not sure that more often than not I would make the same decision that the highway patrolman is making in this song. Now, I wouldn't be a highway patrolman, honestly, so it's not like I'm ever going to be put in a position where I would be putting any of my family members in jail. But I guess what I'm saying is that I am not prone to, I'm not saying never, I'm not saying I mean, we all do everything. There's going to be times when I do what the highway patrolman would do in that song. There's going to be times when I won't, but I'm just saying, as a general rule, I think that my commitment to the standards that I have made for myself is such that I will not compromise those standards, even if it means risking damaging a relationship with someone who is blood. And one other thing I want to comment on, he says in another place, I catch him when he's straying, teach him how to walk that line. A man turns his back on his family, he ain't no friend of mine. What line is he teaching him to walk? Well, he's teaching him to walk the line that society wants him to walk. Well, that's just the line that he happened to be born into, because he was born into that society at that time. The line that this society wants you to walk, if you were born in another country in another time to other people, the line that they would want you to walk would be a different line. See, that's another thing is, I get it. There are stupid decisions that people make that we can look at and be like, that's a stupid decision. You really should not be doing that. But if the line that you want someone to walk is just the line that will cause everyone in society to go, oh, okay, we applaud you now. You're a fine, member of society. Sometimes maybe we shouldn't care so much about that line. Sometimes we should. It can go either way, I suppose, but that's a tough one too. Trying to hold other people up to a standard that the society wants you to hold them up to, the society wants you to hold yourself up to. Sometimes those standards are arbitrary and stupid, Sometimes they're not worth holding up to. So let me finish with these thoughts. I don't always have a deep dedication to staying in touch with some family members, especially some that live far away or are more distant, people that I just don't see all that much. And I don't usually feel bad about that. I don't even think about it a lot, but this song has me almost feeling bad that I don't feel bad about that. So I'd like your comments on that. How do you, especially if you're an ISFP, um, are you dedicated to staying in touch with all of your family members, even distant ones? And if not, how does that make you feel? And if you're not an ISFP and you are dedicated to that sort of thing, feel free to comment and let me know your thoughts on that. The next thing I guess that I would say is, I chose my wife and she chose me. Um, that relationship, I believe, should be the highest priority relationship in my life, and then my children. But I love my family, my not my wife and children family. I love my family. But I think that sometimes family is more the people you choose than the people you're just born into. Though some of the people that I was born into, a lot of them I would choose, and I do. I choose to spend time with them because I very much love and enjoy their company. But sometimes I think the relationships that we will fight and die for should sometimes be the relationships that we chose, not just the relationships that we were born into. So if you're an ISFP, let me know your thoughts on that. And then I guess finally, the last thing I would say is just overall, especially for you ISFPs, how do you feel when you hear this sentence, a man turns his back on his family, he just ain't no good? And I mean that not in the abandonment sense of I see my family in need and I just pretend I don't care, but more in the, I would do anything, even set aside my own principles and values um, to maintain the relationship with a family member. Uh, what thoughts does that sentence evoke in your mind? Are you a person who's like, yes, family is family at all costs, no questions asked, no exceptions? Are you a person whose family is family, but it can be taken too far? If I've got a family member that is just, absolutely abusive, then, I'm cutting them out. Are you a person who thinks more, yeah, family, I definitely want to have a close relationship with my family, but I've got to protect myself and my, let's say spouse and children first? That's priority. Are you a person who's just like, yeah, family, if we get along, great. If we don't, whatever, or are you a person who says, no, the people that I choose are my family, the people that I'm born into, they can align with me or not, whatever. So let me know what you think about all those things. If you're an ISFP, in the comments, please say, hey, I'm an ISFP and here are my thoughts on it. I agree with you. I don't agree with you. I feel the same way. I don't feel the same way. Here's why. And if you're not an ISFP, I still want your perspective. Give me your perspective and let me know how what I'm saying sounds in your ears, especially if you're an ISFJ, ISTJ, ESFJ, ESTJ, someone with high introverted sensing. Because I do believe that this extreme, it's not extreme, but I mean this I don't want to say the word extreme like it's ridiculous or it's wrong, but this more extreme than maybe I have, dedication to family at all costs, does tend to go, I see it anyway, play out more in high introverted sensing people. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this, especially if you are a high introverted sensing person. Do you relate? Do you not relate? Thank you so much for watching. Again, please subscribe if you have not already. And if you have any interest in donating financially to what I'm doing on this YouTube channel, see the link in the description below. That will give you an opportunity to do so. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.